Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Bucky O'Hare. In the last part we started off the game and now we're in Yellow Planet, and at the end of the last part we also saved Jenny. I don't use her in this level because I forgot to, honestly. But Jenny is without a doubt the strongest character in the game for fighting boss fights. Not because of her main shot. Her main shot's just kind of a thin laser forward that's pretty fast, but you can't fire it as quickly individually as you can, say, Bucky's own pea shooter, so in that regard, Bucky is a little better. But when you get her power meter up to max especially, her charge shot is the best attack in the game. What she does is she stands still and she generates an orb that you can control. It's a pretty slippery and loose controlled orb. Like it's always constantly moving, so you kind of need to tap up and down slightly to keep it in a single place if you want to. But especially at max power, it basically does damage every frame it's on the opponent, or at least like every couple of frames, and lasts a while. I think in a lot of cases you can like two-shot bosses with it. There we go, that's me remembering to at least show it off. I don't remember to use it on the boss fight though, is the problem. Yellow Planet's a little bit of a weird stage though, in that it's probably the most inconsistent in the game in terms of what it's trying to be. Because Green Planet's a pretty standard like first level kind of deal. Blue Planet's very focused on the snakes and ice platforming stuff. Red Planet's very focused on the instant kill lava. Yellow is focused on having cannons come out of holes, platforming on these ships like we saw in the first stage, and then all of a sudden at the end it becomes a radically, like, two different mechanics in a row. With that said, it's also probably the most costly stage to fall down in because you got screens like this that are just giant vertical scrolls where you're hopping on these things. There is thankfully some kindness in that every fourth ship, I believe, just stays in the center, so if you start falling, try to direct yourself towards the center of the screen and hopefully you won't lose too much progress, but just don't be like me in my first playthrough and be on the screen for somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. It was kind of sad, honestly. But I'd say overall the next screen is the worst screen in the level. If only because if you come to this level first, you're really low on options on how to deal with it. On this screen, we got a bunch of asteroids and planetoids we need to use as platforms. If you have Blinky with maxed out power, you can use his hover to get between them pretty quickly, all things considered, especially early on. But if you don't have Blinky, you're forced to use the asteroids that are going across the screen in somewhat random places. They go between, like, 4 different cycles, I think. You need to use them as platforms to get from one planetoid to the other. But given how much vertical and horizontal real estate you have for what's coming ahead of you, you don't know if the asteroid you're going to get on is going to lead you to the next platform, or to death in a lot of cases. I hate this room. Especially in cases like this where I'm just forced to kind of wait for the one to show back up. Yeah, it's about like 3-4 second cycles there. Nothing too annoying, but on a first playthrough this is a nightmare room. Especially if you're like me on the first run, and think these asteroids aren't platforms, but things trying to hit you, and just making it way too hard for yourself. Though I'm not sure if you use Deadeye's charge here, if you can get on the side of the planets. With that said, now, this is a train level. You're going to need to do some fast platforming, swapping from train car to train car before it falls off of the train track. That said, the most annoying part of this is at the end of this very long screen. I think in terms of horizontal screen space, this is the widest screen in the game. At the end of it, you're gonna have to do this, swapping from car to car, with spikes that you're gonna have to duck under and all that. If you mess up, you're dead. It's pretty tight. The weird thing about Bucky O'Hare is, though, we've showed already in this game that it's pretty quick to die because there's so many things that just kill you in one shot. But if you don't die, you can build up a pretty hefty amount of lives. But in that case, it's also just super easy to piss those lives away. This game is, I think, a case for if it ever gets like a modern sequel or remake for some reason, if the IP ever gets revived. Just have the game be this difficulty with more regular checkpoints and no lives, because there's really no point thanks to the infinite continues. And here we are at the spikes point. Be on your best reaction time, because if you're a second too late, you are dead and have to do all the last, like, minute over again. But thankfully, right before the boss fight, they do give you a pretty good stock-up point that you might as well take advantage of. With that said, time for the boss of the Yellow Planet. This is the Toad Tank. This thing is complicated because it actually has a surprisingly high amount of attacks. To start, the blue thing on the bottom left is going to be firing out waves of beams at you that kind of go in a double helix fashion, while the top one is going to fire out missiles that track onto you. I recommend just spam firing, taking some dumb shots along the way to take care of the bottom cannon, and then taking out the radar dish, which will remove the missiles from play. But after that, though, the Toad Tank resorts to two types of attacks: charging forward and opening its mouth for a giant laser. Both of these are instant kill. So the latter half of this fight's a little dangerous. I wish I had remembered to use Jenny's Toad Ball here, because I could just camp in either of these holes and just be completely immune to damage and stay in a complete safe distance while it just chips away at its health pretty quickly. But thankfully, mashing doesn't take too long. It's not that long of a hard of a boss outside of those two attacks being instant kill out of seemingly nowhere. And that's the fourth of the 4 main stages down. Time to start the endgame crawl, as well as get our final character. Thanks, Bucky. While I was held captive, I kept busy putting together a new weapon. It's my one-shot, does-it-all blaster. You can call it Thumber. If you press the fire button longer, it just gets stronger. Indeed it does, but that's something we're not going to see too often. Bucky brought his brave crew together again. Oh no! It's a trick which the Toads set to capture Bucky O'Hare. Wake up, Blinky.
Captain, we're trapped in a Toad mothership.
They've taken my crew for sport.
Captain, we must save the crew before...
Okay. Welcome to the worst level in the game, bar none, honestly, just because it's so absurdly long. Welcome to the cell. This is a giant prison escape where to start, you're limited to just Bucky and Blinky no matter what. We need to go through the stage and find our friends to rescue them, slowly gaining their abilities back. This stage is long, and it's got a lot of instant kill hazards as well as just some weird beginner's traps. Because the main structure of it is we're going to be moving left to right across these rooms. But between most of the horizontal rooms, there's going to be an elevator section. For the most part, those are just pretty chill, but there's one towards the end that's just kind of a nightmare. What you really need to watch out for in rooms like this are traps you have no idea are going to be there until you hit them. For instance, I'm going to hover over this next section of platforms because the 2 or 3 in the middle there just kind of melt below you when you stand on them, and you have to redo that entire section of level design over again. It's annoying. They do that like 3 or 4 times throughout. I don't get why they did that. It's the only time in the game they do stuff like this too. So we talked about the comics origins just about last part, where it was a bunch of Marvel people coming together. And by and large, the same is true for the cartoon, because the cartoon was animated by Sunbow Entertainment, who, if you're familiar with Hasbro cartoons back in the 80s, is a familiar name because they were basically the unofficial animation arm for that company. G.I. Joe, Transformers, Jem and the Holograms, My Little Pony, The Tick, Into the Mask. I think their last show was the Cramp Twins. They were all over the place and are responsible for a lot of people's childhoods because of that. But because the comic at the end of the day, to this day, is still kind of a cult comic, by the way, another one of those platforms is right here, hover over that entire section, the show just didn't do that well, overall, from my knowledge. And here's Jenny, not. So the thing is with this level, it has 4 bosses, and they are you fighting your own party members in their cells. They all have pretty simple patterns. They lock left and right and then jump up once or twice, firing their beams. I think Jenny's honestly the hardest of them all to start, though, if only because her Toad Ball homes in on you with pretty good efficiency, and she moves pretty quickly on top of the just awkward layout of her cell. A lot of the other cells usually have a place that's pretty safe for you to stand in no matter what. Here, basically nowhere is safe. At least, nowhere is safe that allows you to have a pretty good shot at just shooting her. Like, I don't know why you would try to get into that space in the bottom right overall. I won't save you much at all. If anything, it'll make dodging the Toad Balls harder, because they'll track onto you more accurately and they won't get off screen as easily. This stage is weird, and thankfully, while there's checkpoints pretty regularly, basically every screen in this game is a checkpoint, it's pretty easy to die in this stage. I've lost myself in a hypnotic beam. Cool. Anything else you want to say? No? Well, we have Jenny back now, and that makes everything else a little easier when it comes to fighting. I do wish this level had a little bit of an option of where to go, so you could choose who to save first. And I think there's a couple of cases where it seems like that happens. But the thing is, there are times where I think you could just end up going in a loop in this game, where you just go on an elevator and it sends you back down a floor, or the rooms just loop back into themselves. There is only one path through this, and there is some trial and error to it because of that. Thankfully, most of the platforming sections aren't too hard. Like, we got some Yoku blocks out of Mega Man here, but you can just ignore them with Blinky's flight or even Bucky's high jump. The biggest annoyance is how they start interplaying those with spikes as we go through. So I brought it up briefly last part, and you can tell just based off what the title screen looks like, but this is one of those NES Konami games. But it is a little different than some of the other ones because, notably, a lot of the staff on this game would later go on to found and make games at Treasure, like Gunstar Heroes. In fact, the director of this game is Masato Maegawa. He is the founder of Treasure. So, Gunstar Heroes, Ikaruga, Alien Soldier, Wario World, Gradius 5, that company. In fact, I did Gunstar Heroes not too long ago. And I find that just interesting on a historical aspect. With that said, time for us to fight actually the easiest part of him to re-recruit, Willie. Willie walks left and right, firing his thumber, jumps up on the platform, and then jumps back down. This is it. You can stand on the far left and just keep away from any of his shots. And because of the order of operations I've taken, this is also going to be the first time we have control of Willie, and I am going to be grabbing power-up tablets for him. But I'm not going to use them too regularly because I think everyone else just does better in every other instance. Because what his normal shot is, his normal shot's basically the same as Jenny's, I think it's a little slower. But as you charge up his power meter, his thumber gets faster and stronger, and that's it. It pierces enemies pretty well, and it does, I think, have the individual highest damage value of anything you can use as an attack. It's not really worth it when you have the Toad Ball or the range of Deadeye's triple shot. Thank you. Deadeye may be caught at the top. Alright, let's go rescue Deadeye. Yeah, so that's the thumber. We're seldom going to use it, but I'm still going to power it up just so I can say I technically got 100%, I guess. I do find it weird, though, that when you get a game over, your life gets cut back down to the starting amount, but your power doesn't? I'm glad it doesn't, but I'm just kind of surprised. It seems like a very NES game thing to do. So I guess, hey, props to you for that, for not being impossibly hard in that regard. This is the hardest room to platform in the entire area. Because we got a lot of these One Direction blocks, we got a lot of Yoku blocks, along a lot of spikes. On basically any playthrough of the game, this is like the room I die in either the most or the second most. Especially for this section right here, because what we gotta do here is if you're taking the safe route by going up here instead of just like flying through that lower part with Blinky, you need to get on this block, move on to the first Yoku block of those two pink ones right there, and then stand directly in the middle of the tile that it's on and the one to the left of it so that you just get phased onto the second Yoku block without falling onto the spikes. It's not hard, but it's very stressful and I don't like it. Also, you need to go down through these blocks before you go left, because if you take the top left exit, you're looped back to the left, to the right side of that room. And this is the Hell Elevator. We got a lot of spikes here. These are instant kill, or at least they do enough damage they might as well be. But you can destroy them with any given shot in the game, but since Bucky's the only one who can aim upwards besides Jenny's Toad Ball, you're just gonna turn into him. Stand at about the second tile and just press up and mash the fire button, and you will basically be safe. You'll still take damage, though, because as you'll see, and I have seen, there's some rocks amongst the spikes. And if you destroy the spikes that are beneath the rock, it falls. And the rock does about maybe a third of my current health. The way you're meant to do this is to just sort of look up and see what's coming and then avoid it, but I just prefer the War of Attrition path here where I just take these dumb hits because it keeps me safer overall. Plus, any toads that spawn along the way, I can just shoot along the way. I don't know, I guess they do about a quarter of my current health, but As you saw, one of them hit me twice. And I'm already so low on health that it doesn't make this section terrifying, because these spikes are also instant kill. Weirdly reminds me retroactively of a stage from Mega Man 9, but oh well. This looks stressful, but honestly, Bucky and crew move at a pretty good pace in this game. They control overall pretty well as well, unless you're on the ice. So you don't need to really worry about this section. Just make sure you're always paying attention to what's around you, and if you have to, ignore the toads and take a dumb hit every here and there. Oh, I also probably should bring this up. I wrote this down on a sticky note to remind myself to correct this from last part. Last time I brought up the hard mode, and I was right about how it works. Everything is an instant kill on that, but I was wrong about how you bring it up. You don't beat the game to access it. You use the password, a hard exclamation point in the password screen. Would I do that ever? Probably not, but it's there if you want to. Alright, so Deadeye's fight is a little weird in that he's out of the way for most of it, but enough that you might want to still use Willy or Bucky to do some damage before he gets up to where he goes. Because he moves left and right, but on the way back left, he does his wall climb to get up there, and then does some left and rights up in that little mini cage up there. And that's a good obligation? That's a good opportunity to use the Toad Ball. But you should make sure you only charge it up to a certain extent so you don't leave yourself open to damage while you're on the bottom left like I did stupidly there. Unless you're also very confident that you can take him out on that pass. I'm getting greedy, and that is my biggest problem here. And that's everyone rescued. Whew! Everybody's alright! And that's the end of the stage. We don't have another boss outside of that in this one. And then it just ends. Cool. Also, you do get extra lives every certain amount of points, by the way, since I just saw that happen. Captain, what shall we do? We have to escape, Jenny. Now. Well, where are we now?
I calculate we are near the core of the magma tanker.
Let's follow the Savage chute down to the center. Then we can blow their tanks. Yo, Bucky! Let's ionize the slime-eating toadies! But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we take it to the toads. See you guys then.